Hey, this is Mike. We have a very special guest on this episode. His name is Nick Gambino. He's from Get2Podcast, another movie-based podcast. We had a lot of really great conversations in this episode, and we unfortunately went on a couple tangents. So to keep the episode as close to an hour as we possibly could, we did cut the news segment. We will be releasing the news segment as like a bonus episode in a couple of days. But we just didn't want to have this episode be too long, so we cut that segment for now because we didn't want to cut any of the great conversations we had. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll get that news to you guys in a couple of days. On with the show. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to Remake Rewind, the podcast where we decide if movies should have been remade or rebooted. I'm Mike, as always. With me is Dustin. How are you doing, Dustin?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you.
And
how are you?
We do have Oh, I'm amazing. Thank you for asking, Dustin. You're such a considerate co-host.
Thank you.
And with us, we've actually got a special guest for our 10th episode. We have Nick Gambino from Get2Podcast. How you doing, Nick?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Missing is going to be Xavier. He actually had some great things happening to him the last couple of weeks. He actually just started a mentorship program where he's actually helping new video game designers, get into the field and teach them the ropes and everything like that. So this is a passion project for him that he's actually going to pursue. He's going to be doing that multiple times a week. He's got like an online seminar. So that's something that's unfortunately going to conflict with the podcast. So Xavier has stepped down. He will come in and out periodically as a guest host, but we do want to wish him the best of luck. So Xavier, thank you for the 6 or 7 episodes you did with us. They were great. We really appreciate you kicking off the podcast. Dustin and I are going to hold it down for forever now.
Forever.
But it's good for him. We're very happy. We wish him all the luck in the world with his new endeavor.
Good luck, Xavier. We love you,
good
man.
Luck, man. And we got a really great guest for episode 10. We really wanted to make sure that we got somebody good. We've had Katrina, but she's my wife, so it's pretty easy to get her on the show. And we've had a couple of our friends, but Nick is a podcast professional, so this is we've hit the jackpot now. We're legit. We got another podcaster on the show.
Stroking my ego.
Yep. So Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast, and then we'll get all the plugs at the end.
Okay, cool. Get to the podcast. It's Get to the Podcast with the number 2. It's a very movie centric. We don't talk TV. We don't talk books. We talk strictly cinema, films, and it gets pretty heated. It's myself, Tiago D'Souza, and Neil Carson, and we basically take what the arguments we have in real life and bring them right onto the podcast. And blood is spilled. We basically hate each other, but we try to find common ground when it comes to movies. You guys.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You guys had a pretty heated argument about was it Ridley Scott and James Cameron?
Yes. Yeah. That's
it's
still, we never resolved it. Honestly, Neil and I don't speak off air. It's a sore subject for us. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna ask Dustin really quick. Dustin,
what?
Just gut reaction. Who's better, Ridley Scott or James Cameron?
James Cameron.
I don't want
James Cameron.
Hear it. I don't want to hear it. It's not that he's not. I'm not going to get into the argument again because it'll take forever, and I know we have an actual topic.
Just like a better person, or like a better director.
That's actually
of
a different question entirely because I feel like but no, it's just that people can just say James Cameron so quickly. That's crazy. I feel like there's a lot more involved. There's a lot more to look at. They're very different directors, but they both have classics under their belts. There's so much to look at. I think it takes hours worth of debate and discussion to really say who's the better director. It's not that
I think
James
if
Cameron...
everyone's gut reactions, James Cameron.
Yeah, gut reactions.
But
okay, gut reactions.
like
Man,
murder.
People get murdered over gut reactions. That's not particularly,
the question was framed up as gut reaction.
Oh, man.
But,
all right.
I don't know.
Well, like you said, Nick, that's not the topic of the episode.
Right.
So let's get into it.
Wow.
We watched the 1971 classic Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, starring Gene Wilder.
Mm-hmm.
And we also watched the 2005 Tim Burton, Johnny Depp, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So 2 very different movies based off the same source material. They definitely emphasized different parts of the book and, you know, changed a few things around. What did you guys think of the movies? Did you guys have fun watching these movies?
Not really. No.
You didn't have fun watching the original?
I had fun watching the last 30 minutes of the original.
Oh, come on. Gene Wilder is a fucking genius in that movie. I could watch anytime he's on screen. I can't take my eyes off him.
I think I only liked him once he got really crazy.
Yeah.
He was always really
kinda the
crazy.
same
From
way.
that first, you know, when he comes out of the factory and it's like everybody goes silent and he's got the cane and he's hobbling
That
forward.
scene was like 18 minutes.
It's so brilliantly
shambling.
timed. It's so brilliantly timed. And by the way, that was actually his idea. He was like, I'll only do this movie if you let me do this thing where I come out and
Yeah.
he does a showman type thing where he's walking and then the cane gets stuck in the ground. He continues walking and does one of those Looney Tunes things where he all of a sudden realizes it's not there, and that's when he decides to fall over. Somersaults, greatest showman on earth. And he's like, welcome, everybody goes fucking nuts. It's awesome.
So
I loved it.
I definitely remembered that scene, but this time around, it seemed like it took way longer than I remember it being.
No, that's what's great about no. That's what's great about the original. Like the pacing, I think, is fantastic. They let you like simmer in certain scenes and like some of the emotional shit, the comedy. It all kind of lets it boil. You get into it. If the new one doesn't do that, they actually everything's too fast. It's like you don't get to enjoy anything. You don't get to like. It's a chocolate factory. I mean, it's about chocolate, savoring it. You know, licking your fingers.
I agree. Because the new one's only 5 minutes longer than the original, but they do cram, you know, a lot more in with Willy Wonka's backstory and the backstory of the Oompa Loompas and stuff like
and
that.
And the editing is a nightmare in the new one. Like literally,
it's much more brisk.
And nothing's grand. Nothing actually. Even the big scenes when they're in big rooms where crazy shit's happening, you don't really feel it. You don't feel the grandness of it because it's so choppy. They don't really, you know, they don't ease you into it. There's no foreplay whatsoever. There's none.
All right, so let's try to narrow the scope of this conversation, at least initially. So what do you guys think should be our criteria for, you know, guiding this conversation?
Well, I think we should cover the original. I like the fact that Dustin doesn't like it because then, you know, we can spar. And apparently you have some problems with it, Mike. So
Yep.
That's crazy. I think you're both on drugs. But it makes sense, Dustin, that your name is Dustin because, you know, apparently you've been Dustin. Get it? An angel dust joke. That was an angel dust joke. No,
That was a really good one.
That was original. That was original.
I'm glad we brought you on.
No, but I honestly, I'm a huge Gene Wilder fan. When he died last year, I was like, I love Blade.
No, he definitely was.
I think he was
a
genius.
An amazing actor. He's done some great stuff.
But he always had this
especially
insanity.
his movies with Richard Pryor.
Oh yeah,
Those
Stir
are some
Crazy.
great
Stir
team-ups.
Crazy is one of my
Blazing
favorites.
Saddles.
Blazing Saddles.
Young Frankenstein. No, he's definitely got a great catalog of movies. So, since you mentioned Gene Wilder, I definitely think we should talk about the two Willy Wonkas, and kind of discuss how they're different. You know, what Johnny Depp brought to the table, what Gene Wilder brought to the table, you know, how they were different. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was at least, like, the different world. Like, they're two very different planet Earths, at least, you know, what we see before they enter the chocolate factory.
Yeah.
Drastically different.
Although
how
they
the
both
people
appear to
roll that.
operate on some sort of candy-based economy.
It does seem like, you know, world events are shaped by that. So definitely interesting. And then I guess we could just, you know, talk briefly about the differences between the two movies. Like there are some big scenes in the newer movie that are missing from the original. Like big scenes. Like ones that are some of my favorite scenes from the original are completely absent from the new one. So I think that'll give us a pretty good framework to work on or work with.
Okay.
So
we'll start with the Willy Wonkas.
We'll start with the Willy Wonka, the 1971 one. I don't know if we really need to do a plot summary for this. I think everyone's probably seen this movie, but just in a nutshell, Willy Wonka, you know, crazy candy guy, shuts down his factory because people have been stealing his candy. And then he opens it up in secret, you know, a few years later. Nobody really knows what's going on. And decades later, he decides that he's going to give away some golden tickets and let people into the factory and give them a lifetime supply of chocolate and a secret other prize for one winner. And then just crazy antics ensue. The world goes crazy over it. The kids finally get in there, and one by one, the kids are eliminated. And that's pretty much the plot in a nutshell. I'm sure, you know, as we're talking about it, we'll bring up specific scenes and, funny things that happened in the movie, but that's it in a nutshell. So, I guess we should just start with Willy Wonka. What do you guys think about the Gene Wilder version? Like, what do you guys want to say about him?
Well, like I said, I'm a huge Gene Wilder fan. I think there's nobody else like him. I don't think, like, when you watch him, he's doing things that I've never seen anybody else do. And the biggest thing about him, he always seems to have an insanity simmering right beneath the surface. Like, this guy could snap at any moment, which I think is a lot more interesting than Johnny Depp's out there insane, this guy's possibly a serial killer thing that he's got going on.
The thing that's funny, a lot of people say the Johnny Depp one has a serial killer kind of thing, which I'm not going to say he's not creepy and doesn't have that, but I definitely get that in this one. In fact, in this one, this viewing around, I actually feel like Gene Wilder's is the darker Willy Wonka for a couple of reasons. In this one, the Slugworth Company is actually, like, it's got to be under the umbrella of Willy Wonka or Wonka Chocolates, because at the end of the movie they say Slugworth works for him, right? But they mentioned, like, the Slugworth Company stole one of his biggest candies, so it's a really strange kind of premise. Like, he must own an opposing chocolate factory, just so he can set up this, like, spy ring to decide who the heir is going to be,
right?
Yeah,
but Slugworth hits up every single child before they even hit the factory. Right. So, and all of them, like, it's implied that all of them have agreed to tell Slugworth what's going on and let him know about the secrets and everything. So, him being a spy, Willy Wonka already knows which kids are assholes and which families are a bunch of assholes who are willing to sell him out.
Well, yeah.
So, he must have, so it's not really, it's very heavily implied in the second movie that he set this stuff up, but it's obvious he set this stuff up, and he's just basically torturing these family and children.
Yeah.
And then he is just super mean to Charlie at the end. Now, granted, Charlie did steal fizzy lifting drink, but he, like, goes and says, like, "You stole fizzy lifting drink. You lose. Good day."
Good day, sir.
Completely loses
he's fantastic in that scene, though. Like,
it's a great scene,
and
but
his face
cruel.
gets red. It's cruel, but it's so well acted. He's testing him, though. He's saying, "I think this is the right kid, but I'm gonna leave my entire legacy, my entire fortune, everything I've worked my entire life for, to this kid. I got to make sure he's not a piece of shit because I don't trust anybody." I love it, but it only works when he pushes
it's
to his
basically
brink.
Saw for children, though.
It's not Saw for children. Yeah, I guess it's Saw for children.
Like, they have all these moral dilemmas, and if they do the right thing, they'll make it. But, the Saw movies are very one-sided and designed specifically to be almost impossible for the person to overcome unless they drastically change what kind of person they are.
Yeah.
Like, these kids were set up from the beginning.
I actually don't think they were set up from the beginning. I think it just happens to be that's what makes a fun movie, is that you have a bunch of piece of shit kids, and he doesn't actually know who's good and who's bad.
But what about the Oompa Loompas? They sing about it. They know.
Oh, they're freestyling. They're freestyling. They've been doing that in hip hop for 40 years.
Yeah.
That's all.
I don't think the kids are all set up. I think they're just terrible.
Yeah. The new one does imply they were set up, because even Charlie goes, how do they know
that song? Seemed really rehearsed.
Yeah, it seemed really rehearsed. Yeah. How do they know? And they put her name in that song perfectly. Like, how did they do that? But in the original, that's not implied. It's not even done. Like, it's a full-blown Broadway musical in the second one with the Oompa Loompas. I mean, they're doing, like, crazy shit, rock concert stuff. In the original, they're just kind of coming through, tapping their feet. And
I completely forgot that the original was a full-on musical, which is dumb, because I obviously knew I don't remember the song, like the Pure Imagination.
Yeah, Pure Imagination.
Song, and like that one.
Yeah.
And all the Oompa Loompa songs and everything like that. But
and
I
the Veruca
forgot,
Salt,
like the Candyman song is a huge song, but I forgot about, like, Charlie's mom song and the song that We Got the Golden Ticket. Like, I forgot this was a musical.
And it's a great musical. I'm not like a huge musical fan, but, like, I love that movie. I love the numbers in that movie. Even Veruca Salt going nuts with the Golden Goose and running around, trashing everything.
I actually really like that one.
Yeah, that's, like, the only one I liked.
Oh, yeah, you don't like the Pure Imagination? Just that sweet song right when he brings them into the main factory floor with the place that's fully eatable. You can eat just about anything.
That song's just a little too slow.
No, I love it, though. It's easing you into this. It's beautiful. It's fucking beautiful. You know what? No, I will not.
I'm glad you like it.
Nothing is perfect.
Just to make another kind of argument for the insanity that is the Gene Wilder one, that boat scene, which I think, Dustin, you were saying like that's where the movie kicked into gear for you.
That's when I started to like the movie. Yeah, on the boat.
That's pretty early on, though. That's not
so
that late.
goddamn disturbing. There's like bugs crawling over like dead bodies.
Yeah,
and then,
chicken
like
gets
reptiles
its head
and
chopped
stuff.
off.
leaving and like what?
Chicken gets its head chopped off in that scene.
Yeah.
No, there's crazy
Yeah,
shit. That's an
why?
LSD trip. That whole thing is just one big acid trip. It's crazy.
Yeah, and then
Why would
from
he
then
do
on,
that?
I found it to be an enjoyable movie.
Okay, well that's
Why
pretty
would he
early
do
on. I
that?
thought you said you only liked the last 30 minutes.
I don't think that was that early. It didn't feel that
That's
early.
not no.
Only after the
So
first
thing
kid
is-
gets sucked up into the, Augustus ends up, I think.
Yeah,
getting
but it
sucked
takes
up
like a
in-
year for that first kid to get
No,
stuck up.
so the thing is, so when I was watching this movie, my wife Katrina like had something happen and she needed my help with something, so I had to pause it at some point, and it was like Mike and
Mike's the second
Charlie
last
were
one,
still
yeah.
around, and so Mike and Charlie were still around, and I paused it, and there was only like 13 minutes left with 2 children involved in the movie, and then the whole like resolution of the entire film. Like once they got past that song that you really like about the whole place being eatable and everything, like the imagination song, once they got through Augustus Gloop, because like, even that scene took a long time for him to get sucked up into that pipe, but once he was gone, that movie was just clipping real quick. So I think Dustin's right. Like I don't think that part popped up until almost a half hour, maybe 40 minutes before the movie ended.
Yeah.
Because the movie's only an hour and 40 minutes. It's an hour and 39 minutes.
The other thing that stood out to me was that this factory is in the middle of town and seemingly protected by like a hobo with a knife cart.
Yeah, dude, that guy was creepy.
What was
the
that
hell
guy's
was that?
deal?
That was in my notes too.
I don't know.
Oh,
I guess his
man.
job was just to scare the people who were looking at the gate.
Well, those Oompa Loompas look like they can
must-
take care of themselves, so I'm sure he's got a full security force of Oompa Loompas in there, ready to bite ankles
true.
and,
So-
and cock punch people. So that's what I guess. He has the Oompa Loompas handling everything from security to.
You think that knife cart guy's trying to get a job? He's trying to get a foot in the door.
Right.
Maybe.
I understand.
So, we'll go back to Willy Wonka briefly, and then I think we'll move on to the world. So I agree that this Willy Wonka is more nuanced. Like he goes to, once he, like Charlie wins and he like gives the everlasting gobstopper back, he's like, "You win, Charlie." And he's like,
Everything.
super happy. He's like, "You know what happened to the person who suddenly got everything that they ever wanted? They lived happily ever after." And like there were moments that he was very tender and you could see the love in it. Like so the thing, he literally had a twinkle in his
Yes.
eye when Charlie won. So, like, I agree that they're,
He was charming. You actually liked
his-
him. I didn't like Johnny Depp
Yeah.
at all in the second one. Like, at any point, there was a couple funny little lines, but Gene Wilder's
He had a
character
couple
was
one-liners that
lovable.
were
Like,
good.
you actually were like, he's despicable, but he's not actually despicable. And there's a character arc there that feels like, oh, this has been revealed that this guy is actually can love another human being and be warm, and he's about bringing joy and chocolate, and he's got to be more than that. Anyways, I
Right.
loved hating him and I loved loving him. I just thought he was, he was nuanced. He had different levels to him.
he had some pretty good, like, one-liners and, like, just deadpan reactions when, like, one of the kids would go do something stupid and the parents are like, "No, stop." And you're like,
Stop, don't.
"No, wait, stop."
Yeah, that was
please,
funny.
Don't.
Right.
So, like, that part of him was really, really great.
Scratch that, reverse
I
it.
agree that this is a masterful, like, role. Like, he really took that role, like, I would say, like, if they remade Pirates of the Caribbean, people would be obviously comparing Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow, at least in the first
Right.
movie, the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Like, that is an amazing job. That's just completely going into a role. I think this is iconic. I definitely agree. There is definitely layers to it. So I do think that you're right. I do love this character, and I hate him at the same
Right.
time, I guess, at certain points. But let's get into the world. This is definitely a weird world, like Dustin mentioned earlier. Like it seems like it's like a candy based economy. It's really strange.
It's big news all over the world that people get to go to tour this chocolate factory.
What's really interesting? So the movie opens up with all the kids getting out of school and then running to the candy shop, right?
Yeah.
And they have that big musical number and the Candyman can and everything like that.
Mhm.
And Charlie's just outside watching these kids have the time of their lives in this like candy shop where this like candy guy's like singing to them and picking up all these little girls and hugging little girls, which is a little creepy on its own. But it's a different time. I'm sure it was innocent. But this guy is
Are you?
throwing throwing free candy. I get that Charlie's poor, but why is he not in the store when they're giving out free candy? Like, he's looking like he's never had candy in his life, and this guy's literally like throwing candy in the air and letting people go behind the counter and take candy bars. Why the hell is Charlie not in there?
It's a good call.
I don't know. It made no sense.
I don't know.
You know, I never really thought of that, and I think because he doesn't really want a handout, even though, you know, he goes to the chocolate factory for a handout, but he's got more pride than that. He works for his stuff, and these are a bunch of little rich kids with their money, and he knows he's just... I think he's just... fuck it. It's beyond reproach, that film. I don't know. Because he didn't want to go in there and just get a free handout. That's what I'm going with. Well,
he had to get home to that cabbage water.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, he had to go get the newspaper. He had to, then this Charlie actually has a job.
He does have a job.
There's no dad in this movie. There's no dad in this movie. His dad died a couple years prior.
Right. And in the second one, he didn't even go to school, from what I could see. There were no school scenes. There was no other children.
Yeah, it didn't seem like there was. So some of the other things that were interesting in this world was just once they announced the contest or the golden tickets, the world goes crazy. Like, there's one woman whose husband goes missing, and the kidnapper like calls, and the ransom is he wants a case of Wonka bars, and she's like, looks like, dude, can I have some time to think about it? Like, she's considering not giving her case of candy bars up for her husband. You've got the like Slugworth walking around talking to all these people. He's supposed to be like the president of this company. Like, he's getting all nitty gritty, like going to these people. Like, you'd think he'd have underlings for that.
What I mean, but the reveal at the end is he's not actually, so that would make sense.
Yeah, which still doesn't make sense because there's still a Slugsworth corporation. It doesn't make any sense.
But he's doing it on the slide. He's only telling the kids that he works for Slugworth and that he's Slugworth. So it's only these stupid little kids and their, you know, and their parents. So it's not like he needs to produce evidence and he's, you know, going on national television or international TV and just going, hey, you know, I'm Slugworth.
This movie is a world where you can make a contract and negotiate directly with children. So Slugworth goes to the children, not the adults. And, you know, obviously, you know, if they thought he was real, they would.
Oh, these parents are aloof the whole
contract.
movie anyways. I mean, honestly.
And when they go to the actual factory and they sign that giant contract that's on the wall, the children are signing that. Some of these people are from different countries, so this isn't an international contract with children involved. Yeah. I don't think any of that would hold up.
It would technically hold up because it's just magic. It's in a magic factory, Michael.
It's true.
Got it. Magic trumps international law. Got it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Now you know. The more you know.
Thank you, Dustin, for explaining that.
You're welcome.
The other thing that I thought was really funny about this one was the teacher. Like, he cancels class when they hear about the contest.
That guy's funny too.
And then he can't, can't do any like simple math. Like, he couldn't figure out what 2 out of 1,000, like what percent that would be. And he's like, I can't figure that out. It was really dumb.
Yeah. That computer joke was pretty stupid too.
The computer one was stupid. Like, you know, I can't help you with that. That'd be cheating.
I'm now telling the computer that if it helps me, I will share a chocolate bar with it. Yeah, that well.
What's the computer going to do with chocolate?
And obviously this is 1971, so we have to think with, you know, if we're going to watch a movie in 2017, we're going to watch a 1971 film, we have to also put ourselves in that state of mind of not the advances in technology.
No, it's got to hold up.
It does hold up, though, but you can't be an asshole about it and be like, where's the cell phones? Why doesn't he just pull out his iPhone and Google it? Like, what does Slugworth actually look like?
I didn't say anything about an iPhone. What are you talking about, Nick?
I'm just saying that's like, you can't say like, oh, it's got to hold up on every ad. Like, you have to also put yourself in that frame of mind and be like, okay, good, this was 1971. And also, you know, when you say it's like a chocolate-based economy, everybody's, you know, big. Now everything's big news all the time, every day. You know, you go on social media and there's 50 huge news stories happening. We're all so connected. We're so wherever. And then it was like one major thing would dominate the news cycle for a while. You know, if
it would be candy.
Yeah, well, in this case, it was like this thing, this huge thing. No, like when I remember even like
I have a question. What is the most recent big candy news you've heard about?
Exactly. That's not a thing anymore. But in the 70s, I'm sure there were, you know, big things like that. If one major thing like that were to occur, it would dominate the news cycle. If something like that would happen.
It's the liberal media keeping big chocolate out of the news.
It's all this alternative facts and fake news.
Oh man. All right. Do you guys want to? Is there anything else you guys want to say about this first film before we segue into the second one?
Well, I a lot of it I want to talk about in comparison to the second one, which we can kind of talk about a little bit when we get into the second one, comparing certain scenes to the first one. I like the little things. Gene Wilder's constantly dropping little things that are too quick, and you got to, did he just oh, that was funny. Like it goes almost under the radar. Like he's just constantly dropping little things that scratch that, reverse that thing that he keeps doing. I love that. Like he'll say something. Yeah. Totally deadpan, totally straight, and it's backwards. He goes, "Oh, scratch that, reverse it."
Or I liked when he makes fun of the parents quite a bit. Like he's actively mean to the parents whenever they say anything. Like one person's like, "Will this boat float?" And he goes, "With how buoyant you look, absolutely," and stuff like that. Like he's super mean to the parents.
Is there's no, like, they mentioned that they're gonna get the kid out of the pipe or drain Violet. Like they don't show these children surviving.
They do in the second
ordeal,
one, but
right?
in the first one they don't. You just get the idea that hopefully they lived.
Yeah, or that they don't, and it's kind of more interesting.
This one, the Gene Wilder one, does seem like a lot more competent. Like I said, he knows about this stuff happening, and all the children are warned. Don't eat that gum that has all the meals, and don't go mess with the golden geese, kind of thing like that. So they're all warned.
You
not
can
to
almost
do the things
trust him more in the first one. He seems like, though he's a little unhinged, he knows what he's doing. There's a little bit more competence. Where the second one, you're like, this guy's completely unhinged. He might just take out, an AK and just waste them all right there, in some weird
the thing that's
mental delusion.
Yeah.
Interesting is, he also seemed more competent. Like immediately, there was no kind of delay. Like when something bad happened to one of the children, he's not like, "Oh, what am I gonna do? What should I do?" It's very much like, "Go take this kid to the taffy room. Hey, go when Violet blows up, he's like, "That's juice. That's not air. Go bring her to the juice room." Like there's no delay. Like he knows exactly what to do to fix it. And we'll talk about more in the second one, but that wasn't the case.
No, he was like,
one.
"Oh, I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What are we gonna do about this? I have no fucking clue. I guess the kid's just gonna die in my factory, and I won't have to, answer to the authorities for that one."
So the fizzy lifting drink's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and I do think that Charlie and Grandpa Joe are complete idiots for drinking it, because they had seen those two are bad mouthing every other child that something bad happens to. Well, that kid deserved it for doing that. Grandpa Joe talks about Veruca should be beaten multiple times in this movie, and then they go and steal a drink and almost get killed by that ceiling fan. I thought it was just absurd that they did that, knowing, because they're supposed to be the heroes, the white cap people. And they were making fun of everybody else for not listening to Willy Wonka, and then they go and do it themselves. That really bothered me this time around.
I think they just got caught up in it, man. They were overwhelmed by all this magic. Everybody was gonna, I don't know. I felt like all of them were gonna be sucked into something.
All right, so I guess we talked enough about the first one, the 1971 classic. I think we should just dive into the 2005 Johnny Depp movie. Drastically different in terms of tone and visual style. I mean, it is a Tim Burton movie. You can definitely tell it's a Tim Burton movie. But general impressions without going into much detail. What do you guys think
I felt
about this
like
one
the
compared
Tim
to the
Burton
original?
aesthetic was just hammered on top of this movie, and it didn't add anything to it.
Yeah.
Especially even in just the title sequence at the beginning, where both of them kind of have that how it's made factory kind of thing going on, but in this one it was all spidery and just trying to be creepy looking on purpose, and it just didn't work. I wasn't that impressed with the way it looked in the original, and this one was worse.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I didn't hate the second one at all, but when you compare it to the first one, there's definitely issues.
So,
like you said, it's just trying to be too Burton-esque.
I worked at the movie theater when the Burton one came out in 2005, and if there was a movie that I liked, I would watch it on every break and lunch while I was there. And this was not one that I did that. I didn't dislike this movie, but it wasn't good enough, or it wasn't different enough for me to want to watch it constantly. We have it on DVD, and that's because Katrina, my wife, already had it. It's not a movie that I ever purchased or thought I'd really care about watching. So I'm kind of meh with this movie. I don't dislike it and I don't hate it, but this movie was to me, started out a lot more depressing than the original one, even though Charlie's got more of his family. Like, he's living in a house with no roof, and it's a very Tim Burton looking house. It's all crooked and just, I don't know, like, there's no way Charlie would still be living there. Like, he'd be a ward of the state in this version of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, for me, I think the new one didn't have any of the heart of the original.
No, there wasn't very much charm, although Freddie
Highmore was actually great.
He's delightful. That kid, when he was a kid, was adorable.
He basically disappears in the entire factory. Him and Grandpa do shit the entire movie. When they get into the factory, they just become this wallpaper the entire movie. You know, after they get into the factory and until he's basically awarded it or given the prize or whatever, it's just they disappear. There's nothing going on. They're commenting every now and then.
I agree with Grandpa Joe. Grandpa Joe was like not much of it until, you know, he was I think a bigger part in the beginning of the movie, like because there was a lot more exposition to the backstory of Willy Wonka and the factory and everything in this version. So I think he added a lot at the beginning of the movie. But Charlie throughout, like, he was doing commentary on like every kid, and then like when people were like, none of this stuff makes sense, like he had this like bewilderment the entire time where he's like, it doesn't need to make sense, it's candy and everything. Like,
yeah, but like that's not a lot to do if you just walk in around just going, hey, comment here, comment there for like 45 minutes to an hour when the movie's named after you. It's called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's not Charlie talking in the Chocolate Factory. Like, that's basically what it became. Just a line here and there. Comment. Whereas the first one, the original one, they drank the fizzy lifting drink.
I mean, that scene's gone. So that disappointed me that the fizzy lifting drink wasn't in this version of the movie.
That's what I'm saying. He just has no action. There's no action for that character in almost even the scene where they're going around eating everything. He doesn't really do anything. He almost goes and grabs an apple, and then Violet grabs it, and she's like a little cunt about it. And she grabs this thing. I had to drop that word because you said you'd never used that word in the podcast yet, so I wanted to make sure I got that in. But she's like a little bitch, and she snatches that thing from, and he doesn't really engage in the factory. He's kind of just commenting here and there. The first one, he's engaging. He's really in it, and even stealing the fizzy lifting drink. And Grandpa Joe, I love David Kelly, the guy in the new one. I loved him in Waking Ned Divine. Yeah. He was great. But he's kind of wasted in this movie. He doesn't do a lot in the factory. The beginning, before he gets into the factory, sure, there's a lot going on. But once he gets into the factory, and even at the end, there's nothing really going on. In the first one, he confronts Willy Wonka, gets in his face. He's like taking care. I feel like he can't do shit to protect. That's this kid true. In the new one, there's nothing. He's just there. Charlie is given a lot more to work with at the end of this one, though. So like the major difference between this one and the original one is at the end, Charlie is, I guess, deemed even more worthy because he doesn't steal fizzy lifting drink. There is no point where he kind of goes off the path. Right. But he's offered the factory and is told he has to like basically abandon his family and go live with Willy Wonka, which is creepy as hell. Because of Willy's own issues with his own father. Exactly. So he's got we get a little bit more of his backstory, but he's told he has to leave his family. So Charlie is like, nah, fuck that shit. Right. And decides to stay with his family, and then later on convinces Willy Wonka to, go back with his father, who is Christopher Lee, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, so he gets a lot more to do on the tail end of this movie. So the beginning and the tail end, Charlie gets a lot to work with. Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty. But that's weird though, like, because it's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and the Chocolate Factory part doesn't really happen for him. Like, there's just not a lot going on. This movie is this one. So even though they changed the name, so the original one was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. This one's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This one is actually, I feel like, a lot more about Willy Wonka than the original one was. So it is interesting that they changed the name, considering this one's actually they went back to the title of the book. Of the book, yeah, kind of the whole point. And there was more that was, because I read that book. I haven't read that book in 20 years, but the whole scene where he's actually in Loompa Land and he's trying to find the Oompa Loompas and all that, that's in the book. Yeah, there's a lot of things. I think the squirrels were in the book. Like, there's squirrels in this one, and then in the original movie it was like, I prefer the golden geese, honestly. They actually trained the squirrels in this movie to do what they did, and like, it's pretty crazy. Yeah. But getting into back to our criteria, the Willy Wonka, Johnny Depp, visually he was very different. I think he was like, it still had like the purple color, like the same color scheme, but he was dressed a little nicer. Like, it didn't look like, he just looked like he was kind of eccentric, but like his clothing would seem like fashionable. It
and
seemed
he was really
faker in the new one.
and he was very vain. Like he was super all about his hair. The whole thing that spurred this contest was that he had a gray hair.
Right.
Very vain Willy Wonka.
And I think I see those as lazy traits to just add to a character to try to give him layers. Where the original didn't need stuff like that. Didn't need these lazy little, let's just say, he had a gray hair and that's why he started to look at his own mortality. And that just seemed all very lazy. Let's just chuck these things in there just to
it takes
give
the
our
fun out of it.
Quote unquote depth. Yeah. Whereas the other one was more mysterious. It actually was too much exposition in this one, too much character background. Whereas the original, you kind of don't know, where did this guy come from? Who is he? Why is he that way? There's a lot more mystery, which I think
that's a note
adds
that I
to the
wrote
character
because
he's a mysterious character.
Too much exposition at the beginning.
Yeah,
is what I wrote. One of the first notes I wrote for this movie.
And he keeps having flashbacks, throughout
when
it.
When did this movie take place? What time frame? What year do you think this movie took place? The new one.
I think it's supposed to be present time, being 2005 when the movie came
I don't
out. That's
think
what
so,
I think. If you look into Japan and everything, and they have a lot of technology. They show them in Tokyo, and there's a lot more going on that's modern day. But it's Tim Burton. It's Tim Burton modern. He always adds these
because they had tube TVs, but the video game that was that Mike TV was playing looked pretty good.
Looked like Call of Duty,
yeah.
But if you look at Batman Returns that Tim Burton did, that's supposed to be modern 1992, but it doesn't look modern because it's Tim Burton.
Yeah,
in this one, what he does, he has his own world.
In this one, when they go and they announce the contest and they show all the people going out and buying it and stuff like that. There's one where they're in upstate New York, in a fancy place, and all the women are dressed in 1940s, 1950s dresses in this, which is a very Tim Burton thing to do.
Right.
Like you mentioned, Batman. This actually has a couple ties to the Batman
suits,
movies.
Right. The Batman movies, they're in fedoras and pinstripe suits, but they're not.
So visually, it looked a lot like it, but also the toothpaste company that the dad worked at. Was called Smilex, which is the name of the gas, Joker's gas in the original 1989 Batman movie.
I missed that.
Yep,
that's cool.
But yeah, this one's a little bit different in the way they set up the world. Which let's finish talking about Wonka, and then I guess we'll go into the world. But this I couldn't it just kept hitting me throughout this movie. This Willy Wonka sounded a lot like Matthew Broderick. His voice was very Matthew Broderick.
I could see that.
It was really interesting. And this Willy Wonka is less confident in himself. There's a lot of times where he seems unsure of himself, and he does a little laugh,
Right. He's socially awkward.
Yeah, and he doesn't seem to know what to do when these things happen. Every time something bad happens to the kid, he's kind of what should we do? And then the Oompa Loompa song comes, and then he kind of oh, I guess we can try this. And
right.
Like you mentioned earlier, the original Wonka seems more confident, you can trust him. At the end of this, we do see that, Violet is, because she got squeezed and everything like that, she's a little bit more flexible and bouncy, and then Mike TV is 15 feet tall and super skinny, and stuff like that. These kids are drastically changed, which I think is an interesting touch to the movie, that these kids changed, and hopefully they're for the better.
It's a little too fantastic for me. The original one just towed the line on fantastic, and this new one kind of went a little bit too far.
I agree. I don't remember what the actual term is, but when magic seems realistic in a movie, it got too fantastic. I agree. But this Willy Wonka seems like he wasn't as intelligent, and it wasn't as fun. He went to the jungles and he got all these different things, and it seems like there was a little bit more science to what he was doing. But the original one, he's throwing shoes into the recipes because they needed a little bit more kick and stuff like that.
Right, which I like.
He wasn't as fun.
Right. In this one, they had the whipping cream, or the whipped cream, where they were whipping the cows.
Yeah.
A little ugh. But at the same time, they're trying to do that shoe kick kind of.
Yeah, they were trying to do it a little bit.
Yeah. And his whole. I didn't dislike the whole backstory where it's basically that he has daddy issues and his dad was a dentist and didn't want him eating chocolate, and so he ran away from home. I appreciated that as
and he was allergic to chocolate too.
Yeah, and I appreciated that, but I thought it wasn't executed very well. I felt like it was very contrived. It didn't feel this movie didn't make me feel. And that's
agree.
my disagreement with this.
He
That's what
also
I didn't like.
seem to actually, even though like his whole thing was he's supposed to care about chocolate so much because his dad didn't like chocolate.
Yeah.
It seemed weird. Like he went and built a castle for an Indian prince made out of chocolate,
Right.
and that doesn't seem like a thing that Willy Wonka would do. I mean, maybe, but to me, it's like he's like, "Oh, you better start eating this." Like he didn't really.
I think that was in the book. That may have
Was
been
it?
in the book. Yeah, I think it was. So I
okay.
think that's where they borrowed that from. He builds them the
So-
palace made of chocolate that melts in the sun.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this Willy Wonka other than he's kind of just creepy.
He's creepy, and see, Johnny Depp is hit or miss for me. People are like, I love Johnny Depp, and I'm like, I really do like Johnny Depp. He's done some great things. I think he was great in Edward Scissorhands, Donnie Brasco. He's great as Jack Sparrow, but he sometimes just does these things where I'm like, I'm not feeling anything from you. You're you're being too
he
weird.
Did some interesting things in this, like facial expressions and stuff like that, and he still had some pretty good one-liners. Like I like when
he did.
Like
Yeah.
in the room, like everything in this room is eatable. Even I am eatable. That is called cannibalism. That's frowned upon in most societies. Like he had a few of these things that were pretty funny,
Right.
but
He did. He had some things that made me chuckle, and they were well delivered. They were good comic timing. But otherwise, like we said before, there's no real heart.
No.
This movie's missing the heart, and that includes from his character. There's no warmth. You don't really feel anything. Even his transition, quote unquote, at the end doesn't feel.
I didn't
rushed.
find
Yeah,
myself
it's rushed,
wanting
but the
to
whole
know
movie's
more
rushed.
about him the way that I did. Even in the previous one, like it might not have been my favorite movie, but I still wanted to know more about that character. And you end up getting less, but it feels like more. And in this one, like I just didn't care. Like it was just too kooky and weird, and like I was like, okay, cool. Like I don't care. I don't need anything from this character.
Yeah, like it's a
Yeah.
non-entity in your mind. Like you're just like, okay, that was a movie I watched, and that's that. Willy Wonka, it's like, okay, that's interesting.
like
I
I
could watch
liked
that again.
the look into his childhood, but I do feel that like this movie was just wrapped up. You mentioned the editing and the pacing of this one, like at the beginning of the episode is kind of weird, and I agree. Like the fact, like so Charlie was like, "Nah, I don't want your factory if I have to leave my family." And then it shows like a little montage of them fixing up that like shitty house that they lived in a little bit.
Yeah.
But it still is like a really shitty house. And
Yeah.
then he gets this job as like a shoe shine, and he like shines Willy Wonka's shoes, and like he's pretending not to be Willy Wonka, and then he's just like, let's go to your dad's dentist's house, and like the dad recognizes him by his bicuspids, and then all of a sudden there's just a hug, and now he's happy, and
Yeah, it's all
he's
very
he's going to family dinners with Charlie, but this was like all took place in less than 10 minutes, and like this is supposed to be the big culmination of the entire movie, and it just
Climax.
didn't sink. Like it just didn't
and
work.
even every reveal in the factory is not well paced or edited. In the original one, when they're walking through that room and it gets smaller and smaller, that is done in a way that's like it tricks you. Like you watch it and you're like, how did that just happen? And it's done in real time, in camera. There's no CGI in that film whatsoever. So you watch that and you're like, oh, that was kind of cool. How it just the room got smaller and smaller. They actually built a room like that. And then he opens the door, and now they're in this huge factory, and it's this beautiful reveal, and it opens up, and it's grand, and they have these great wide shots that really show you the depth and the breadth of this room. This one didn't do that at all.
No.
It doesn't even feel like it hits you. Like, it just sort of like, you think they're in a room that's getting kind of smaller, but then they sort of like the camera angles and the way they do, and they edit it and cut it, it doesn't really, I'm like, is that what that room is? I can't really tell because they cut it too quick. And then they are kind of in the
And like, would you even be looking for it if you
had
hadn't watched the other movie? Like it doesn't stand
exactly.
alone.
Would
It's
you
just
have
boring.
missed it? Right. Yeah.
And they cut out. So I guess we're done talking about Wonka. There's just not much to say about him. Like he was just weird.
He was.
But
And
going into the factory, like this one seemed even more outlandish than the original one, because like the original, other than like it did still have that like tunnel with the boat, but it didn't seem like it was like miles and miles and miles. Like it just seemed like
it was a
they
non-event.
were paddling it. Like
It was kind of a
just-
non-event.
Yeah,
Nothing
In
really
this
happens
one-
in that tunnel.
well-
Like they see some things.
Well, in this one, like this tunnel, like they're going super quick. Like this tunnel is miles and miles and miles, and like this one has like a room that goes on forever, which is like a hospital for the burnt puppets from the original. Which we didn't talk about his entrance, which we should maybe go back to that in a minute. But they had these rooms that were ridiculous that did not seem like they would fit in that factory. Like this guy would have had to have like the same contractors that Batman had when building the Batcave, because there's no way that people wouldn't know about like what he would have had to do, because this was a normal factory at some point. Like Grandpa Joe works in the factory at one point, and now it's completely different.
Seem to be extremely competent in their own right. They seem to be hard workers.
That's true. It must have been.
I feel
them
like they
who did
laid
it.
a lot of the pipe.
This doesn't make sense.
That
There's
funny,
no way that
it feels like the size of this factory has to basically be the entire underground of the entire town or the entire city.
Yeah, there's no way that it wasn't.
It's got to reach from like border to border. You know, it has to be. It's too big.
Yeah,
there's no way. And I don't know how nobody notices this thing right under their feet, but it seems to go for miles and miles.
Yeah, that didn't make very much sense. So let's move into the world. Like this one didn't give you a ton of like backstory on the world. Like the other one did. Like the other one was like 30 minutes of people looking for tickets and like all of society getting involved with it, including this one. It was really just boom, boom, boom. Here are each of the 5. They do mention like one person would counterfeited a ticket. Right. And then the original was like somebody from Paraguay, and this one it makes sense with the time. It was Russia, tying into today. But other than that, there wasn't anything going on. The Mike TV kind of like they kind of tied him in with what the computer scientist was doing in the original. Like he mentioned like he figured out some algorithms and then figured out where one of the tickets was going to be, and he just bought one candy bar.
Yeah.
Right.
But the kids, like even the kids in this movie didn't seem as interesting as the original.
Oh no, not at all.
Set.
Like, they weren't. I mean, Veruca Salt, I wanted to see her more because that kid seemed like she was delivering a good Veruca Salt, but she didn't really. I don't know, like the whole nut scene didn't really happen
and like
for me. It was like
Mike
it just
TV
sort of happened.
was different in this. Like he was basically not a character until towards the end when he got taken and he's like, "You've invented teleportation. You're an idiot. Like why are you?" And everything.
And then he ends up in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, none of the kids were as interesting in this one at all. Augustus Gloop, like. I don't even remember if he spoke in this movie.
He did.
Honestly.
He did. He was eating himself, and he's like, "I taste delicious." Yeah,
and then Veruca, like the parents were almost a non-entity in this one. The only one who really had much to do was the mom, Violet's mom, and she just was kind of a weird character. And then Veruca's dad was drastically different in this one. Like he just seemed like a rich guy who gave her everything, but he didn't like, "Oh, Veruca, what's the problem? What's the matter?" Like. Right. They took away a lot of the character elements of this one. They did,
and none of them were like. It didn't seem like any of them were shocked or surprised when their kids were being thrown down in garbage chutes towards an incinerator, or being sucked up pipes and possibly drowning in liquid chocolate. Like none of them reacted in any way that made it seem like they were feeling the weight of the situation. They were just like, "Oh, this is happening now. I guess I'll just stand here." He couldn't get through that little gate because it was locked, and Willy Wonka had all those keys and couldn't figure out which one. I'm like, just step over the fucking thing. Your daughter is about to be burned alive, and these squirrels are either going to eat her or they're going to burn her up down in the incinerator. Like, jump over the fucking thing. There was absolutely no urgency whatsoever from the parents. Yeah, and that's not like I don't think that was a choice. I think that was just the characters.
I think Veruca was the only one that had a little bit of character in it, like when Violet got like blown up from eating the gum, which all her clothes changed too, and then she got ridiculously large, like proportionately in the original ones. Like she got bigger and rounder, but she was still like roughly the size of a girl.
It was realistic.
This one she got to be like 20 feet. Yeah, she got to be like 20. Yeah, this was the more realistic blueberry human transformation.
Right.
But in this one, she gets to be like 20, 30 feet. Her clothes change color too, which doesn't make any sense. But Veruca does have this line that was pretty funny. Like the mom goes like, what is she going to compete in? And then the Veruca goes, "You could put her in a county fair." Like that was kind of funny.
Right.
But other than that, like
it had some moments. I didn't hate the movie. I'll be honest. I was just entertained, but it was just very much like, okay, I watched that. I don't feel like I need to watch it again. That's what.
Yeah.
How I always felt about that movie. It's just like you can watch it once, maybe twice, and you don't need it. Yeah, I've watched the first Willy Wonka like a number of times. I've probably watched that movie about 20, 30 times.
That was one of my dad's favorite movies, and it wasn't one of those movies that came out on like DVD and VHS. And like now it's pretty easy to get, but it used to not be something you can just go to Target, Walmart, Best Buy, and just go pick up.
Right.
So every time it came on TV, my dad made us watch it because he was a big fan of that movie. Like he was a kid when it came out. So like I do have a little bit of an attachment to the original, but not huge. Like I did think it was kind of boring, but this movie, it was so meh.
Yeah.
Like most of my notes
that's
are
also
just
Tim Burton.
plot.
He's hit or miss too, just like Johnny Depp. Like, for every Edward Scissorhands, there's a Dark Shadows. For every Batman, there's a, I don't know. I was gonna say Big Fish, but I like that movie. But I was
gonna say, don't say Big Fish. I love.
Yeah,
that movie.
I actually really like Big Fish. I was just trying to think of it, but he's hit or miss. Sometimes he's on point, and sometimes he misses the mark. Sometimes he's a parody of himself, and it felt like in this one he was just parodying himself.
Yeah, I guess so. So, do you guys have anything else to say about this movie? Like, I think it didn't have the heart. I think that's the main thing. There's just no heart to this movie. And visually, it was interesting. Like, I do like the Tim. I do think I disagree with Dustin saying that like the Tim Burton aspect didn't add anything, unless you just meant the opening credits. Like, I do think visually it was pretty cool. I do like that it did show what happened to the kids, even though it was too fantastical.
Yeah, if you're going to do a remake, you might as well show the things that weren't in the original. You might as well, even if you don't do them properly. So, yeah, it was cool seeing the kids afterwards. It just was very, like you said, meh. It's not, I don't know.
Yeah, if they were going to go in the backstory, I would have loved to see more Christopher Lee. Like, adding Christopher Lee to anything, I'm fine with. Yeah,
and all their strong points, like Freddie Highmore, even Grandpa Joe.
David Kelly.
Kelly's a good actor, but he wasn't great. They didn't give him enough. They didn't even have some sort of incident between them sneaking off and doing anything, which I thought was great in the original. They didn't even replace that with anything. And I think they wasted their strong points. I thought the Oompa Loompas were very unremarkable.
Strange.
Like, yeah, and their song choices were terrible. I'm like, what genre of music is this? I don't even know what I'm listening to.
Well, like, the thing was they were supposed to have a different decade for each. And so the original one was like 40s, 50s. The next one was like 60s, psychedelic. And then there was the 70s. And then there was like the 80s glam rock.
But they didn't sound good.
No.
The originals, even though they're dorky little songs, they're at least like infectious. They get in your head. You're like, oompa, oompa.
So
these ones were just all over the place.
They're all forgettable. Like, I wouldn't be able to sing any of them.
One line. Sometimes they didn't even enunciate properly in their songs.
So unless you guys have anything else for this, like, I don't have much else to say. We can move on to the news, and we do have an email from a fan.
Oh, okay. I guess move on to that.
Do you have anything else to say, Dustin, about this movie?
Oh, I have one more thing, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
So in the original, you also had the grandparents were confined to their beds for about 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
In this one, they're in bed together, but there's no note of whether or not they've been there forever or they can or can't get out, except for Grandpa Joe just jumps up and starts doing a little Irish jig. And it's very weird, especially when you watch the original and he has that whole scene where he's like, no, I'm going to get up. I'm going to come with you.
The original Grandpa Joe is kind of a dick because he mentioned, like, in the original one, he's like, man, like, Charlie works too hard. Like, when I feel better, I'm going to go get a job. And they're like, well, you've been in here for 20 years. Then he's kind of like, well, the floor's too cold kind of thing. They're just like making a bullshit excuse.
Right.
And then he actually takes money from Charlie for tobacco. Now, ultimately, he uses it to buy a candy bar for Charlie.
Yeah.
But he actually took money from a child for tobacco and then changed his mind.
Well, this was 1971. Tobacco was, medically prescribed at the time. No, I'm just kidding. But, like, tobacco was more important back then than it is now. Now we know it's all bullshit. But the guy needs his tobacco. He doesn't have a lot. He's shitting in the bed with the 3 other old people every day. But, no, it's weird in this one where it's sort of like he just hops up, starts dancing, and he's like, I'm going to go to the factory with you. It's just all...
Are you implying that all those old people are in the bed because they're lazy? Like, they're by choice? Yeah, it does.
Seems like it in the new one. There's no note of why they're all just laying in this bed together, fucking... head to foot or whatever. It just seems
very odd. I agree.
You know what I didn't care about? Charlie's dad. I don't feel like having the father in it added anything.
Yeah, it didn't mean
to
anything.
The story.
Yep. No, he was very much and he was he's a shitty dad. He wasn't providing at all. Like okay, fine, you lost your toothpaste job. Go get another goddamn job sweeping floors at the
get a paper route.
Something like get a paper route. Do something. Like, stop being a pussy, man.
All right, so I've got one email that I wanted to do, and then I've got a few quick news stories. So the email I got was from Travis S., and it just says, hey guys, big fan of the show. I really like most of your episodes. Quick question for you guys. If you had to pick one or two movies to never be remade, what movies would they be? Back to the Future. I knew you were going to say that,
pick.
Dustin.
That's my pick. Shit.
That's my pick as well. I just don't think you'd ever recapture that magic.
Well,
luckily,
I'll tell you one they should never remake. Ghostbusters. But they already did. They should have never remade Ghostbusters, honestly. I guess you wouldn't call that a remake, but it's a reboot.
I'm not in that camp that doesn't think, like, it could have been cool. Like, I actually don't dislike the new movie. I do think it didn't need to be like, oh, the previous one didn't exist. Like, they could have just made it 30 years in the future kind of thing. And I think
I would never have asked for it.
I think it would have been
received
a lot
like
better.
Disappoint me too much, or
Like, I really liked the end.
Are you a really big fan of the original Ghostbusters?
Yeah, I would say so. I enjoyed it.
Because I'm at the same level with Back to the Future. Like, Back to the Future and Ghostbusters are on the same level for me. Like,
anytime I was able to watch Ghostbusters as a kid, I did. I watched the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters. I watched the Extreme Ghostbusters. I did.
I did.
I didn't have a proton pack. I didn't, but
I had the trap toy that you would like throw out, and it had the little air pump.
I did. I had one of the traps.
Yep.
I had one of the traps.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then I had a bunch of I had an Egon figure from The Real Ghostbusters.
We had the firehouse.
Egon.
Yeah,
that thing was cool.
Yep.
Well, I just, I was fine with a remake, reboot until they did it, and I didn't hate it because I don't hate movies. I really don't. I watch them. I'm like, all right, I was entertained. But it was never going to capture the original. No. And that's what I ran into. And Back to the Future, that's why I don't want them to do it, because I'm like, it's literally going to be the original was perfect, and I feel like that about the original Ghostbusters.
Well, the original
I don't
movie,
need anything more.
The original Back to the Future is a damn perfect movie. Like, there's video essay or something that I watched not too long ago that basically says, like, there is not a single wasted frame in that movie. Like, the opening credits to that movie are amazing. Like, it has like the news report of
all the clocks,
missing plutonium, and then it just like you see all the clocks, and you see
food.
like the Rube Goldberg
plutonium
machine,
case under the thing.
The plutonium case underneath. Then you see like Marty is late to school, and like there's nothing that's wasted on there. The whole setting up the clock tower thing at the very beginning of the movie.
Yep.
Like,
that's
there's
Zemeckis,
nothing
man.
that's wasted in that movie.
Fucking loves Zemeckis.
Since we were so unanimous about this movie, I do have like an alternate movie that I think should not be remade. Another Zemeckis movie. One of my other favorite movies that I really, really love and I watch all the time. Forrest Gump.
Dude, why are you stealing my other choice? I literally was going to say Forrest Gump as my other one. You're reading my mind, man.
But Forrest Gump it's one of those movies that shouldn't be good. Like, on paper, the movie doesn't make sense. Like this one guy who does everything. It's better than the book that it's based off of. And I just, once again, I don't think you could recapture the magic that Tom Hanks and Zemeckis had.
Right. And Gary Sinise and Robin Wright.
Gary Sinise.
Sally Field.
Everybody in that movie.
Yep. Also, Big Lebowski. You don't want to remake that. There's no reason to.
I don't care about Big Lebowski.
Really? I like
what?
that movie.
I think that movie's overrated.
Oh,
It's
I think your opinion's overrated. That's a fantastic movie.
I didn't see the Big Lebowski until about 5 years ago. And like,
People
it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. I love the Coen brothers. I like all the movies they've done. I just think that movie's overrated. Maybe it's because I saw it too late.
Yeah, I think you should give it another shot because there is so much happening in that movie. See, I watched that movie when it originally came out. I was like 12 or 13, and I saw it, and I loved it for everything it was. But then when I saw it again several years later as an adult, I loved it for a whole nother set of reasons. And now every time I rewatch it, I'm like, there's something else I'm catching. It's so quick. There's so much jam-packed into that movie. There's so much quirkiness. Everybody delivers perfectly. There's unique characters, unique lines. The whole plot is just crazy. This guy can't catch a fucking break. I love the way. I think it's like, I love Raising Arizona, but I think Big Lebowski took what they were trying to do with Raising Arizona in terms of their quirky movie and just like brought it to perfection. That's my
Dustin, do you have any other movies that you think are untouchable?
Nothing really coming to mind. I mean, there's not many movies that are that precious to me, you know? Like, a lot of these remakes I would never have asked for, and yet they keep happening, and I don't really... Like, it's never going to stop, you know? Like, they're never going to stop doing this.
All right. I'm gonna change the question a little bit for you, Dustin. So out of all the movies we've covered now, this is our 10th episode. If there was one remake that you could have made disappear out of the movies we've covered, would there be one that you would have just disappeared and kept the original?
Point Break. didn't
Point Break, get rid of the
that was
2015 one.
added nothing. Was nothing like the original.
All right.
I don't know.
No, it was garbage.
Hey, Dustin, what's your favorite
Back
movie?
to the Future.
That's a terrible question. Okay, good. All right, that makes sense now.
Justin and I
It's a
talk
good
about Back
movie
to
to
the
have as
Future
your
at least
favorite. I'm glad
4
you
or 5
approve.
times a year.
Dude, on Back to the Future Day, 2015, I was celebrating the whole day. It was crazy. I had everything. I had the gear. I had the movie up on a big projector.
So I like them.
I got 2 Pepsi
Do you
Perfects,
like
by the way.
them? So if you have to rank all 3 of them, I prefer 1, 3, then 2.
Oh, really? No, I got 1, 2, 3 in that order.
I
In descending
agree
order.
with Dustin. I like the 1, 3, 2
That's so
because
surprising.
at least to me is the third one. You see the genius that Doc Brown actually is. Like he's making stuff, in the 1800s. He's making ice and all that stuff. Like I think it goes back to the formula. Like it's a more simple plot than the second one. Like the second one, they go into the future, they go to the past. They've got
That's what I love. They're altering the timeline.
It's great.
It's got more
but
memorable stuff. Most people remember. There's.
I think I liked the second one as a kid when I was younger, but as an adult, I like the third one better just because it could be that we've approached that timeline and obviously we've passed it at this point, being in 2017 versus 2015.
Right.
But the third one, it's not dated because it's not one of those movies where the future is past and it's nothing like the future.
Right.
So I think as an adult, just because that one's a little bit more timeless, like you can watch it at any point and it still makes sense. I think it's a big part of why I like it. And I just love the Doc Brown in the Old West, and I love the train, and he still has the hoverboard.
Yeah, I still love it, and I'm glad they did it because after the first 2, you're like, okay, good, they did the 50s, they did 80s, and they did the 2000, into the future. It's like, what do you do next? Well, you go into the Wild West. That makes sense. So I'm glad they did it. I know they did the second and third one back to back. I do like it. I don't like it better than the second.
All right. I don't have anything else to talk about this week. I don't have anything.
No,
You guys
that's it
got
for me.
anything?
No.
All right. Nick, tell us about where everyone can find Get to the Podcast. Where can they find it?
Okay, so Get to the Podcast. That's Get to the Podcast with the number 2. We're on Stitcher, iTunes. Going to be up on SoundCloud soon. We have 15 episodes up there now, so there's plenty to listen to. Each episode's about a half hour. We cover 2 topics, and we go nuts on them. So you listen to that, and we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, so you can hit us up on that. And that's where we are.
Yep. Really great podcast. I've been listening to it. So you guys started maybe a week or so before our podcast started.
Yeah. Probably.
You guys have been friends of the show. You and I have been talking for months about getting us together. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
We really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. But definitely everyone go check out Get to the Podcast. Like he said, it's a very easy, digestible episodes. They're all around 30 minutes. Like I live in LA, so they're perfect for my little LA commutes. Like one way to my job.
Yeah,
I can listen to an entire episode.
And if you're really into movies, or you're just kind of like a casual viewer, we kind of try to make it fit it into both. So for the movie junkies, the movie nerds, plus the people who just generally like movies.
If you guys want a really funny episode where you can listen to Nick just get super pissed, I think it's like episode 2 or 3. They talk about Ridley Scott and James Cameron, and it's a great episode. So check them out. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you, Nick. You guys can follow us at MDXpods.com. We are on Twitter and Instagram at MDXpods. Of course, check out Facebook and Patreon. Give us your money. No, but help us out with that a lot. We do have, we did just recently change the tiers and the prizes. We will be doing some autographed Blu-rays if you sign up for certain tiers of movies that we've covered. So we've got a lot going on. Check us out. We're going to be trying to make some new promotional materials. Like we're going to start giving out stickers, I think, for people eventually for, signing up. So we're going to have some new things coming. So thank you guys for checking that out. Other than that, thank you guys for listening. Bye.
See ya.